With the help of Hashem, we are learning Megila, Daf Chav Dalid. We left off on Daf Chav Gimel Amid Beis, 6 lines before the bottom of the Amid. We are concluding the Sugya, the Mishnah that we had on Chav Gimel Amid Beis concerning a minyan, and the final topic that the Mishnah spoke about for which a minyan is needed, with the detail that you have to have at least one Kohen as a member of the minyan. That's when it comes to making evaluations for the Beis HaMikdash. When it comes to consecrating land, this is an explicit parsha in B'chukoisai, that you need to have a minyan, one of them a Kohen, as Torah Shebal Peh, Taichas Torah Shebachsav, that is going to make the evaluation how much one needs to pay to redeem that land. And the Mishnah concludes with the words V'adam Kayoitze Bohen. So the Gemara is going to push it, explain what is the case of V'adam, what's the case of the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah in the bottom of the Amid on Chav Gimel Amid Beis is going to teach us regarding rules, more rules, Benegea reading of the Torah. We're going to have other rules concerning reading of the Haftorah. For example, there's a rule that Medalgin ben Navi, that when the Navi is being read for the Haftorah, one is allowed to skip from section to section. Masha'enkein, when you read the Torah, one is not allowed to skip, as we all are familiar with. Now, there are times that we have two different readings, we have two different Sifrei Torah. But you don't skip, and we learned about this a little bit in Yuma, from one part to the other part. We're going to actually point out that there is a stira from the rules that we're learning here, and the way the Mishnah writes in Yuma, what the Kohen Gadol would read on Yom Kippur, and reconciling it is going to shed a lot of clarity to the rules in the Mishnah. We're going to have an interesting topic, we'll quote the Tosfos, regarding the obligation of a blind person. As we know, the sugya is a blind person obligated to keep the mitzvahs, is a blind person not obligated to keep the mitzvahs. Tosfos will tell us that our sugya follows the opinion that holds that a summa is exempt from the mitzvahs. He's not a mitzvah ba'isa. But midrabanan, a summa is obligated. And therefore, as we are learning through these topics, that there are some who hold that if the whole chiyuv is only midrabanan, a katan, in our case a summa, will be able to fulfill the obligation of others, because midrabanan, which is a beautiful topic. When we learn more be'inyun, we'll see that it's not so simple, that you can argue this is one derabanan, that's a double derabanan. Nevertheless, we're going to be touching on the topics. We're going to be learning a little bit about birchas kohanim, certain restrictions for which a kohen will not be allowed to duchen. The word duchen means a platform, that a kohen will not be allowed to go up on the platform to give the birchas kohanim. We're going to learn a little bit about a minor in giving birchas kohanim. I know that the common practice, you look in a shul, is that kohanim bring their minor children with them. We'll see about this topic in our sugya. For example, a kohen who has blemishes on his hands is someone who should not duchen, not to attract people's eyes, having them look on their hands, which might be unusual. And as we know from Chagiga and other places, that one has to be extremely careful not to gaze on the hands of the Kohanim while they are giving the Birchas Kohanim. The Shechina is shoida on their hands. And mi'inyan le'inyan, we're going to go on Chav Daled Amid Beis to some rules regarding tefillin. And actually what we will be doing is that we're going to have different expressions in the Mishnah about different behaviors that one should abstain from. The worst level of behavior is called derech minus. Then we're going to have something called derech chitzonim. Then we're going to have a notch down. It's not derech chitzonim, but we silence the person. Mishaskin oisoi. Then we're going to have another concept of if a person makes certain statements, mishaskin oisoi derech nezifa. You silence him with condemnation. All different types of behaviors that are not okay, but on different levels. It's going to begin today. It's going to continue on Daf Chafei. And without any further ado, Chevra, again, Daf Chav Gimel Amid Beis, 6 lines before the bottom of the Amid. So va'adam kayoitze bahen, reading the words of the Mishnah, the literal meaning would be that if a person is consecrated and you want to redeem the person, you need to have the minyan of 10, and one of them should be a kohen. And obviously that cannot be the meaning, because the Gemara says adam mi kadosh, a person can never be consecrated to the Beis HaMikdash. So amar Ababo, the meaning is va'omer dami olai. So even though that what we have explicitly at the end of the portion of Bichul Koisai is this unusual law, that if a person uses the words erech, dafke erech, erech means the value or the evaluation, but it's about that word erech. So erki olai, erkecha olai. I'm vowing to give my erech to the temple. I'm pledging to give your erech to the Beis Hamikdash. There, the Torah, gender, age gives a specific amount of money, regardless of how much you might be worth in a slave market. But that's only if you stay loyal to the words erech. If a person uses the words damim from money, there, Yataka have to. Every person has a different monetary value. Now, how do you monetize the human being? On one hand, you cannot. On the other hand, you do. There is a way of monetizing it, and that is to determine how much would this person be sold if this person would be sold in a slave market. And that is what the Mishnah is referring to. The Tanya, ha'omer dami olai. If a person doesn't use the words erech or erki olai or erkech olai, but you use the common word damim, then shaman oisai ke'eved. It's not age, gender determined by the Torah. No, every person has a different value. And what is the value? How much would that person be worth in a slave market? For which you have to have experts. And here again, since this money is going to the Holy Temple, it's not enough to have one expert or 3 experts, dafka 10. And dafka, one of the 10, has to be a kohen. Now, how do we know that that's indeed the rule? Logically, even though it's money to the temple, let's say 3 people would be enough. B'chlal, I want you to know, we'll learn this more in Sanhedrin, as a rule, whenever you have a group of people doing something, it's definitely better for them to be a odd-numbered people, not an even number. Because it's only common that people have a difference of opinions, and when you begin with an odd number, which is normally the rule of a Beis Din, you have 3, you have a Beis Din of 5, we'll see this in Sanhedrin. You have a Beis Din of 23, you have a Beis Din of 71. What you are accomplishing is that if everyone gives an opinion, you're going to have a majority-minority, you're going to have a minyan, you're going to make a vote. There are exceptions, Gzedas HaKosov. But how do you know that the exception? Now, when we learned in the end of last year, we learned the Torah writes the word kohen 10 times, v'chulei. But if not for that, you would never come to a Beis Din of 10. So how do you know that? So the rule is 3 lines from the bottom, because Eved iskash lekarkois, because the Torah compares halachically the dinim of an Eved. And dami olai, the rule is shaman oisam ke'eved. Eved is like karka. How do we know that? It says in Parshas Bahar regarding an Eved Kanani v'hisnachaltem oisam levenechem, that you should hold them as a heritage, right? Levenechem acharechem, to the children after you. Loreshes achuza, that they should inherit the Eved Kananim as a achuza, as a possession. The word achuza is normally used only concerning real estate. The fact that the Torah uses the words achuza concerning the Eved, that's the context of the Parsha in Bahar. That is from where we know that an Eved is like karka for various halachas, including this one. That of dami olai ke'eved, how like the rules of a karka based on of 10, and 1 should be a kohen. All right, moving on to the next Mishnah, again on the bottom of Chav Gimel Amud Beis. Baruch atah Adino Eloheinu melech haolam sha'akolim v'dvarim. Says the Mishnah, HaKoyre ba'Torah, when a person is reading from the Torah, lo yifchos mishloish psukim, never should less than 3 psukim be read. Rule number 2, v'lo yikra lemeturgamen yoiser mipasuk echad. During the times of the Mishnah, up until the times that people forgot, they stopped using Aramaic. When people spoke Aramaic, the public recitation of how this pasuk is interpreted, let's say in Onkelos, was of tremendous practical benefit. Not everyone understood Lashon HaKodesh perfectly. Everyone understood the Targum. Nowadays, now you understand why we don't do it. Nowadays, people, Mistama, understand Lashon HaKodesh a lot more than they understand the Targum. Targum doesn't mean English. Targum means dafka, the Targum that was made by those great tzaddikim that we learned about in Megila, whether it was Onkelos Hager, whether it was Yonis and Ben Oziel, and that translation / interpretive translation was lechatchila made in Aramaic. And they used to read a pasuk out of the Sefer Torah, and the translator would translate that verse. So the Mishnah is saying, only do 1 pasuk at a time. If the reader will read more than 1 pasuk, it could be that the metargemin, that the translator would get confused. Certain people are not capable of repeating more than a certain amount. They get confused. They once inaugurated the president here in America, Lahavdil, and the Supreme Justice read up as too many words. So the president got fadreit. You have to be careful. If you're speaking to people that don't have the capacity, you speak less words. Daf chav daled on the top. However, ubenavi b'shloisha, even though, in other words, that second time we're learning this din, they also would interpret in Targum the Navi, the Haftarah. Imagine the Kiddush Club can go so much longer. It's double the size now. Everyone is teaching it. There, if the Meturgamim will get confused, it's not the end of the world. So here we actually prefer for the reader to read 3 verses, and then for the interpreter to teach, to share those psukim in Aramaic. And if he'll get confused, it's nicht gefährlich. Another din. However, this is concerning the Navi. Now there's 2 different ways of learning the Mishnah. We're going to follow the Shita of the Rishonim that interpret the word Parasha not in the normal Parasha context, but if these 3 verses are about 3 different topics, the Gemara is going to give an example of 3 verses in Navi, one right after the other, not in 3 different parshas, the way what we call a parsha, but each pasuk is completely a different topic. Here, even by the Navi, koida echad echad. In other words, don't give to the interpreter to have to remember 3 completely different topics. If it's of the same topic, then you can go up to 3 verses. Another rule, medalgen ben Navi. When the reader is reading the Haftarah, we also learned in the last year certain general rules that they 21 verses. I know that there are exceptions and people are not medagdik nowadays, but when you read the Navi, what happens if you want to speak about 2 different, if you want to go to 2 different places in the Navi? Can you jump? Can you skip many psukim? Yes, you could. You can skip while you are reading the Navi. But the idea of skipping or not skipping has a lot to do with tircha de tzibura. That is very important, halacha l'maisa, because one of the main reasons why you may skip, why you may not skip, all is based on the fact that the Navi was read from a scroll similar to a Sefer Torah. It was a rolled scroll, ink on parchment. And we know this from a Sefer Torah, that if you skip a topic, it takes time for you to roll the page. Chumashim, books are very different. We all know that today. You can have a marker in the book and you can skip to many, many chapters ahead in 1 second. You give 1 drei, you give 1 flip over. But here, you didn't have those farim. So when you're rolling the Navi, is there a problem with you skipping, which would make l'chayra people wait? Also, it might confuse people. So by Navi, you are allowed to, but ve'ein medalgen b'toira. More details in the Gemara. Even in the Navi, there is a limit. This last line is about the Navi. Even though you are allowed to skip in the Navi, it can only be to a place close enough that while the interpreter is interpreting, you are now rolling it to the new place. If the place that you are rolling it to is so far away that the Meturgaman will interpret and then he'll finish interpreting. So there's going to be a paused silence until you find a new place. Even by the Navi, it's not okay. It's only okay because there won't be a break. Now, if there won't be a break, how do you get to the new place? Because you have the translator. Okay, says the Gemara. First of all, Hanegim Psukim, we're having this throughout. Keneged mi. Amar Avasi, Keneged Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim. That's it. Next, don't read Yoiser mi pasuk echad. But the Mishnah says by the Navi you can read up to 3 verses at a time. However, but if the 3 verses in Navi are sholish parshiyos, are about 3 different topics, 3 different subjects, then even by the Navi koida echad echad you are only allowed to read 1 verse at a time. What's the example here? The example the Gemara gives is from Psukim in Yeshaya, not in different parshas. It's all in the same, what we really call a parsha. There are no breaks in the scripture. It's about 3 verses that are in 3 different subjects, 3 different topics, where it says Ki ko yomer Hashem chinam nimkartem. The next pasuk reads Ki ko yomer Hashem Elokim Mitzrayim yorad ami barashoina. The next pasuk reads Va'ata mali poinu Hashem. And since they are 3 different subjects, even though you're reading the Navi, 1 verse, let them mitargem it, and then next, and then it's interpreted, and then next, and not all together. Medalgin b'navi ve'in medalgin b'toira. So we have a Mishnah in Megila. Problem is in Yuma we learned otherwise. V'dimini, it says in the Mishnah in Yuma regarding what the Kohen Gadol reads on the holy day of Yom Kippur. First he reads the part of Achrei Mos, as we all know. Pasha the Seder of the Avodah, and then now then he goes to Ba'asor. Ba'asor, guys, Ba'asor is Parshas Emor. I know it's not that far away. Achrei Mos Kedoshim Emor. It's a couple of columns ahead, but you jump. Now don't forget that on Yom Kippur you're not calling different people. It's the same Kohen Gadol reading it. So you do jump on Yom Kippur. V'hakam edalig. Approach number one. Amar Abaye loy kashe kan. When are you, our Mishnah that says you're not allowed to jump, that's only that if you will jump over to many columns ahead, the translator would have already finished translating before you find the new reading, the new place. So there's going to be a hefsek, there's going to be a pause. That is where it's not allowed. When do we allow on Yom Kippur in Yuma? Now we just read the Mishnah and we know that this answer is not. Obviously Abaye had a different way of understanding our Mishnah, but we read the Mishnah according to the Maskana. The Gemara says it can be. Because Allah Ketani regarding the rule of our Mishnah, regarding jumping, when the Mishnah says, Medalgin b'navi, ve'ein medalgin b'toira, then the Mishnah says, Va'at kamahu medalig, and that goes to the Navi, that even in the Navi, when are you allowed to jump from section to section? Only at kedei shelo yifsek haturgaman. Only if you will you'll find the new reading, the new section, you'll find it, you'll be up to the place prior to the translator already having finished translating. It's going to be a flow, there won't be a pause, which implies, Michlal, that when it comes to skipping over when you're reading from the Torah, klal loy, even if the new location is very nearby, you may not do so. So, here we go. Here Kan goes on Yuma, be'inyan echad. Here there are two things. There's the same topic, and will there be a pause? If it's the same topic, and there will not be a pause, that is when you are allowed to jump over. Guys, you know when you jump over nowadays, I'll give you a good example. Every Taina Sibur. It's the same topic. It's about God forgiving us and expressing the forgiveness tangibly by giving us another luchos. And there's no because it's a column and a half, and it's from the Kohen to the Levi. No one even knows that you're skipping. Then you are, allowed even in the Torah. Our Mishnah, which says that even if it's going to be without interruption, you may not jump in the Torah. That's Mishtei Inyan. Instead, if it's a different topic. Beautiful. And Ve'hatanya has been nichusa. This is a proof. It says Medalgin b'Torah be'inyan echad. By the Navi, you can jump even b'shnei inyanim, even if it's two separate topics. However, kan v'kan b'chdei shelo yifsek hamaturgaman, which is exactly how we learned the Mishnah. Tanya Idek, we learned in another Brais that even though that we learned in our Mishnah that you can jump in the Navi, but there is a limit to how much. So inside one Sefer, Yirmiyo to Yirmiyo, Yeshayo to Yeshayo, the Mishnah says you could. However, ein medalgen minavi lenavi, but if you are changing Sfarim, that is something that you may not, even when you're reading just a Haftarah from the Navi, with the only exception, Ubenavi shel shneim asar. We call this Trei asar. Right, they have one Sefer that has in it a record of 12 Nevi'im. Hoshea, Yoel, Amos, Avadia, Yoina, Micha, etc. So there, Medalig, it's so little, it's considered one Sefer. And the final rule, which limits you jumping by the Navi, Ubelvat Shaloi Yidlaig, Misoif HaSefer Letchilasai. Don't jump backwards. Don't jump out of sequence. Okay, we'll leave it at this. Today, because of us having all of the Haftarahs prepared, printed, we don't appreciate this yet enough, but there was a lot that went into determining what's read, and now it's good for us that I have the schus to learn this, to pay more attention, and you will notice how many times we mamish jump in the Haftarah. You don't notice that it's all printed together, but you're not following the sequence, but you're never going backwards. Next, says the Holy Mishnah. Hamaftir ben Navi. This is something that's culturally very interesting. Today in a shul, maftir is a very chashuv aliyah. It's a very chashuv aliyah. In the times of Chazal, reading maftir was second tier. And you are almost insulting someone by giving them maftir. Maftir you're giving me? I would say that compatible Galila. Today you give Galila lav dafka to the biggest chashuv person in shul. So you need to compensate the maftir reader with something so he should not get insulted. How did the world change? I don't know. It's amazing. So says the Mishnah, Maftir ben Avi, the one who's given maftir, he should be the one that is Peiris al Shema. That's already a more chashuv thing. We already learned about Peiris al Shema. We don't have time to repeat it whenever it's needed. Likewise, the Maftir ben Avi, who over lifnei ateva, he'll daven for them. But it's interesting that by certain Hasidic groups, certain Hasidic Rebbes, you give them maftir and they daven musaf. But it's interesting to know where it came from. It came from the time that maftir after was not chashuv. So Mela, you also were machabed that person with davening for the Amid. Another detail we'll see in the Gemara. In many shuls, the Baal Tefillah was paid money. No one paid money for the person to read the maftir. It was like not such a big kibbut. So someone would get upset, but I'm doing all the work like that one and I'm not getting paid. So you give him after, you give him musaf. He's not going to have a taina that he's not getting paid. We'll see more details in the Gemara. Another din, that if you're giving maftir to a kohen, as we know we can give maftir to the kohen, and that's connected to the sugya that we had on Daf Chav Gimel, whether the seventh reads the maftir, or whether, no, the maftir, you repeat some words in the Chumash, but it's an eighth aliyah, and that's the way we do it, and the advantage is that the seventh cannot be a kohen. Kohen is the first. But a maftir can be given to a kohen. If he's a kohen, he should be the one duchening. Now that's a very difficult line to understand. Whoa. When you have birchas kohanim, keminig Ashkenazim on Yom Tov, keminig the Sfardim every Shabbos and Eretz Yisrael every day, every kohen duchens. What's the v'hu noisa kapov? That's a big discussion. Actually, there are some who opined that all of the kohanim would go to the platform, but based on the rule of Shemei HaKoine, only one kohen would say the bracha. Interesting. And then it would fit. So which one will be the one saying the birchas kohanim? The one that Nebuch got maftir, to appease him. There are other ways of understanding it. The Tosfos Yontif says that v'hu noisa kapov means, and guys pay attention from now on, which kohen begins making the bracha? It's an interesting thing. Imagine you're a kohen, you're standing over there. Whether people get confused. Anyways, when you have more than one kohen, the Baal Tefillah is going to say the Elokeinu silently, and he's going to say loud, kohanim, Am Kedushecha Ka'amar, again in a silent voice. So the Hu Noisa Kapov means that the one that was given the maftir has the honor to begin saying Baruch. And once he begins saying the bracha of the kohen, then all the other kohanim say the bracha along with him, and all the kohanim give the bracha, which is the way we do it. What happens if the maftir is a cotton? So you don't have to appease the cotton. Yes, you do. You have to appease his father. So a cotton can read maftir. We actually learned yesterday that many people held that a cotton can read from the Torah. But a cotton cannot be the one davening. So aviv oy rabbi oyverin al yadai. The fact that you have to gift to the maftir also to be the Baal Tefillah. By the way, it's not Musaf in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is going backwards. That you give shachris to the person who you're going to later give maftir to. Could be you gave them both. So you give it to the father or to his Rebbe. Here, Katan, Koira Batoira, Umetargem. And we already said that there's a machlokes whether this goes to the entire reading. Maybe this, according to many, the Shoinim only goes to Shabbos, where you read, 7 people read, so it goes to the readings from the 4th and on. This whole question that we spoke out, whether reading is Chayvas Yachid. If it's a Chayvas Yachid, it should not be that a cotton should be able to read it, because he's not a Mechuyev B'davar. And even here you can debate that. B'Hashgacha Pratis, for those of us who are learning Perek Echad Rambam Layoim, I think it was, and we're learning now Karban Pesach and Tavshin Pei Beis at the end of Teves. We just learned the famous Rambam that writes that if you have a minor that became an adult between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, so first of all, he's chayv to bring the Pesach Sheni, because Pesach Sheni is not only Tashlumin L'Rishon. If Pesach Sheni would be Tashlumin L'Rishon, he wasn't a gadol by Pesach Rishon, so he's not chayv to do Tashlumin. We have to bring Pesach Sheni, but then the Rambam adds the bomb. But if his father brought the Pesach Rishon on his behalf, he doesn't have to bring Pesach Sheni. And how can that be? He was a minor by Pesach Rishon. So what that his father brought the Karban Pesach for his behalf? How was he exempt from bringing Karban Pesach Sheni? He became an adult between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. So again, we quoted that. I think on that is where you have L'Kotei Sichos Chelik Yud Zayin Kedoshim Daled, that Rebbe's Vart B'Shitas Haramam L'Shitosoi, that since the minor is like a hechsher mitzvah to the father's chiyuv of chinuch, some of the chashivos of the mitzvah goes on the minor. The Rambam uses the words katan chayiv to the level that he can be exempted, because he was taka chayiv, and that's going to fit that katan is chayiv enough to read the Torah in public. Okay, weiter. Aval, however, Torah reading, yes. Don't forget, Torah reading at the end of the day is a Rabbanan. We just quoted from Bava Metzia, Pei Beis, Neviim Shebeneim, whether it was the Moshe Rabbeinu, or whether Moshe Rabbeinu did one part and then it was added to. But you have, it's a Midrabanan. Aval Eina Peiris Al Shema, which is also a Rabbanan. Peiris Al Shema, which is to say the Chatzi Kaddish and the Baruch Hu, and they used to say the first of those two brachas, Birchas Yotzei HaMa'oros. A cotton may not do that, nor ve'eno over lifnei ateva. A minor cannot go for the Amid. You know, many shuls, they go to the Amid by Enkel Okenu. You have to know this. They don't go for the Amid for Shemona Esrei. And again, another bomb line. This is such an important daf. Wow. Ve'eno noise kapov. If we have kohanim here online, a kohen doesn't duchen. A kohen doesn't duchen. What do you mean a kohen doesn't duchen? Now, when does he duchen? When he's not a minor. Ask a yid, when does the cotton become an adult? Oh, you'll say when he's 13 and his body matures. Shtei sa'aros. No, oichet nisht. So Tosfos over here, the Tosfos that goes from the narrow to the wide, says number one from Chulin that a kohen should only duchen when his beard comes out. That's way older than gadol. And number two, Tosfos wants to know that kohanim go, minors go for chinuch. We know you go look in your shul. A minor will go with his father. So look inside the first line under the Gemara.
Just have a cut.
Otazoi, very good. So Tosfos says, I'm reading inside the end of the first wide line of Tosfos. V'had de paslina nacha katan mighty b'she'en gedolim imoi. If there is at least one other adult duchening, yes, a minor should go with the adult because of chinuch. But if you only have a minor, that's what the Mishnah says, a minor doesn't do it. And then he quotes from Chulin, another thing, that you have a concept called a one-time Birchas Kohanim, and then you have, which is called Ba'akroi, and then you have, let's go with the Sfardim, they duchen every Shabbos. Or in Eretz Yisrael, you duchen every day. If you're duchening every day, you want for the Kohen that's going every day, not only to be a halachic gadol, it's not enough. You want him to be old enough where the beard is coming out, which normally we say that's 18 years old. Unless you're a Zion, that's 25. You have to be older for that, whatever the age is. Okay, weiter. Back in the Mishnah.
Wait, so the more often you do it,
the more you want to have someone older. Correct. It makes sense. As a one-time thing, okay, as long as he's a gadol. If the guys were learning, we're touching on gold.
I can make an argument the other way also. Meaning, when you only do it infrequently by us, we only do it on Shalosh Regalim, whatever. You want a hush of a guy. If you're doing it every day, okay.
Okay, Danny, I hear what you're saying, but let me give you the other side. If you're doing it every day, it won't be the end of the world if you don't do it today. If you only do it by us, imagine by us, we're chutz laretz, we do it a few times a year. It's really sad when you can't do it. So there, you want to be more lenient. Okay, we have a client. He's 13. Missing out is definitely more painful. If not, tomorrow you'll get the Birchas Kohanim. Okay, let's go back in the Mishnah. Poicheach. Poicheach means exposed. Now, machloikis. Poicheach means either one who has his legs exposed, he's wearing shorts. Poicheach might refer to someone whose top of the body is not fully clothed, what's it called? The wife beaters? What's that t-shirt called? The undershirt? Whatever that's called. He's dressed very casually. Part of his... Huh? I stand correct. I apologize for all the people. Tank top. Okay. So, if you're exposed, so can you go daven for the Amid? A Mishnah. Poides es Shema, yes. Poides al Shema, you could. Metargim, you could. The more chashiv a position you're taking, the more it's important for you to be dressed appropriately. And all right, no, it's their appearance is of greater significance. Tznius is of greater significance. Next in, Sumam, Pleides Hashema, blind person can both be Pleides Hashema, as we explained in the last year, and it can be Metargim. Now, whoa, again, we're touching bombs. Sumam. So here is the problem. If we're going to go with the shita that holds that a blind person is automatically exempt, right? That was the whole Rav Yosef, right? That I would make a su'uda when he thought that you're not mitzuva v'oisa, he was a suma. He would make are you mechuyev, are you not mechuyev? So Tosfos Bekitza, just to quote the third line in the last Tosfos, going down, the third line, it's like 5 lines from under the Gemara. He writes that the Gemara, the Mishnah is speaking about a bona fide blind person. And yes, the blind person is exempt from the biblically is exempt. For had the patrin and hasam suma hainu min ha-Torah. Listen to the words of Tosfos and look inside the Gilyon Hashas Rabbi Akiva Eger. Avol midrabanan miyachayev. Like by a minor. In other words, since a suma is chayev on a rabbinic level, interestingly, even though we said a minor cannot be played as Shema, but a suma couldn't be played. He's chayev enough to be played as al Shema. Weiter. Umetargem, and he can be the one that's interpreting.
Rabbi, one more time. What exactly is this concept of Peiros Hashema?
Okay, so let's go with one shita. Peiros Hashema means that it's predicated on the importance. Chavre, remember this: that when you make up a zman to start davening in a shul, start davening at that time, and even if there's no minyan, start davening nonetheless. And the advantage is that's the way you build a minyan. If you always wait for the minyan, in the long run you're hurting yourself. Because then people who are rushing bittul malacha, how much did we just learn over the last few daf? Don't even add one aliyah, not to add to the length of the davening. So people need to know that the davening is over at a certain time. And even if a shul, we're not advocating to daven quick. It's important to know you go to shul, I know the minyan is over, it's 7:45. The minyan is not over after 8. I know I can go do carpool, I can go to work, so you begin. So it happens very often that until the minyan came, the oilam is already after a certain part of davening. So they missed Baruch Hu. Again, Danny, let's go according to the Rishonim that hold that if you don't have a minyan by after Yishtabach, it's not only you missed that Chatzi Kaddish and you missed the Baruch Hu. It's worse that many opined that the Kedusha part, the Kaddish and Baruch of the bracha of Yoitzer HaMa'oros can also only be said with the minyan, like everyone holds that the Kedusha and the Shemona Esrei can only be said with the minyan. So they would miss that part. So when you have now 10 Jewish men, 13 years and older together, so you want to now make up that which you lost. So what do you make up? So one of the people will get up there, he'll just go Chatzi Kaddish. By the way, the Alter Rebbe says that you never stam say Chatzi Kaddish. If you're saying Chatzi Kaddish, you should say a pasuk that should justify you saying Chatzi Kaddish. That's another topic. Chatzi Kaddish, Baruch Hu, and they would read the first of the 2 brachas prior to Shema. That's called Poides, half. And that's it. And Baruch Ata Hashem Yoitzer HaMa'oros, and that will be done. Today, the common thing is you just make a Baruch Hu. Ahoicha Baruch Hu. And even nowadays, a Baruch Hu is made after Kaddish. That's
Peiros Hashema was done like at the end of davening?
It was done whenever you got the minyan. Yeah, it was done at the end of davening, Danny. Yes. And only one person read the first bracha. Today, the way we apply Peiros Hashema today is that if there wasn't a minyan for Baruch Hu between Yishtabach and the Birchas Kriya Shema, then they would make a Baruch Hu after Ein Elokeinu, after the Kaddish D'Rabbanan, before Aleinu. That's the way it's done b'poyel nowadays. So the question is, can a blind person be Peiros Hashema? Now, what's the novelty? It's not only whether he's chayiv or not. There's another issue. The bracha is Yoitzer HaMa'oros. God formed the luminaries. This person is blind. He doesn't benefit from the luminaries. So that's another topic. So Rabbi Yehuda says that how can a summa be poides al Shema? I get it, like Tosfos says, he's chayiv enough, he's chayiv midrabanan for him to be able to lead it and to be moitzi everyone else. I accept that. But there's another reason for why a blind person may not be poides al Shema. Kol shaleira ma'odes miyamav. If a person was not born blind, even though now, God forbid, that person is blind, he benefited from ma'odos in the past. He can still say it. But if he was never a person who was able to see, he was born blind, because he never had benefit from the luminaries. More in the Gemara. Tanakam is going to point out that even a blind person benefits from the luminaries. Yeah, Shuki.
The bracha Birchas Shachar of Bukei Ivrim is the same thing.
Oh,
because I know that by that one we say that a blind person says it because he gets the assistance of others.
That's because we paskin like the Chachamim, Shuki, and we're going to learn this now in the Gemara. Okay, says the Gemara. My Tama, guys, let's begin. Why is it that this Baal Maftir got all these privileges? Today, people not pay to be the Baal Maftir. It's everything changed. It's the Olam Hafuch we're living in. So there's two reasons. Rav Papa says Mishum Kavod. Like we said, Kavod means that we're giving it. Maftir was Nishba Chavadik. You insulted him. So to compensate, you gave him other kibudim. Rabba Bar Shimi says no, because the Asili in Suye, he's going to come to fight because people paid, a shul would pay the Shliach Tzibur, and because of the fact that Maftir was considered not that important, no one paid the Baal Maftir to read the Haftarah. So he's going to get upset, not because they slighted his honor, because he's not getting paid. It's amazing how different people, different taivas. Some people are money seekers, some people are covet seekers. Either one, he's gonna be uncomfortable, so you compensate. Now, is there a practical difference? So the Gemara says, yeah. The difference will be if you're davening in a shul where you don't pay the shliach tzibur, like by us. So if the whole thing is about he's gonna feel, the other one got paid and I'm not getting paid, the solution is pay no one. Amachaya. There'll be no machloikes. Oh, says the Gemara, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, if this Baal Maftir is a minor, then Oviv Oiraboy Oivrin Al Yadoi. Now asks the Gemara, that the issue is because of fighting. That doesn't make sense. Cotton Baal Nitsuyu, he's not going to fight. So the Gemara, so therefore it's because of kavod. The Gemara says it's not true. I can have the same question with the other explanation. Elamai, the second to last line, because of kavod, cotton bar kavod too. He doesn't expect honor. Elama, it means Ela ika kavod aviv kavod rabbi. They're going to feel slighted. Back to Daf Chavdalad Amud Beis. So therefore, achinami ika netzuye aviv and netzuye rabbi. So both understandings fits with the Mishnah. So there's the machlokes, and again, the say that we have somewhere in the Gemara that a person's life is divided into three. That in the first third of the life you're pursuing sins of the flesh, and then the middle third is when people are pursuing money, and the final third is when people are pursuing kavod, and that's a healthy animal soul. And once it's off, if you have a Zoken Noyev is so like, oh my God, because come on, you should be into another taiva. Get over with that. Go for your kavod. Okay, right. Percheach. A percheach is an exposed person, Peiris al Shema. Right, but he may not read the Torah. Boy, ula bar Rav from Abaya. Interestingly, now Katan Peicheach Mayo Shikir about Torah. And the Mishnah says that if you are partially exposed, you're wearing shorts, then you can't read the Torah. What about if you are a minor? Now, why would the minor make a difference? So Rashi says, look inside the second line from the top, that Gadol Peicheach, maybe, Hu da'aser lo yira b'cha ervas davar. It's but you're a God. Avol Katan ain't a muzar. Interesting. So Amalei, Abaya responds back in the Gemara, why didn't you ask about an Adam? Maybe if a minor is naked, can he read in the Torah? No, that not. Why didn't you even ask? Because you knew for sure not. It's not about whether the minor is obligated. It's not about the person, it's about the tzibur. Mishum kavod tzibur. Hachinami mishum kavod tzibur. And therefore, even if it's the minor reading the Torah, the rule that you have to be fully garbed applies to everyone alike. Next, Suma poides al shema. Again, that was the machlokes now going regarding Rabbi Yossi, right? I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda, slicha, that Rabbi Yehuda says, no. If he was never a person who was able to see, if he's Suma Meyama, born blind, he may not be Paidas al Shema. So more about this argument. Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Amrullah, the Chachamim told to Rabbi Yehuda. What? Just because he doesn't see it, he doesn't understand what it is? I'll give you an example. Many people sought to expound Maise Merkava, which is something that no one saw the way you see other things. So you see that even that which you never saw is something that you can speak about. So what if he never saw? So Rabbi Yehuda responds, Rabbi Yehuda, hold on, you can't compare, it's apples and oranges. Why? Over there, ba'avanto de liba talia milsa. To be able to darshan, to expound and to explain Ma'aser Merkava, it's about understanding. You don't need to see it. For some people are capable of grasping Ma'aser Merkava. But over here, when you're making a bracha regarding the luminaries, it's not about you understanding the benefit of having luminaries. It's about you actually benefiting from the luminaries. Mishum hanohu and v'haleis lehana'am. And obviously, you can already appreciate what's really going on is how do you interpret that bracha? Who told you it's about hana'ah? It's birchas hanehenin is about hana. You would think that when you're making a bracha prior to Shema, it's b'chlal not the time to make birchas hanehenin. But the premise is that there has to be an element of hana'ah. And as we'll see in a moment, it's not that the Chachamim challenge Rabbi Yehuda because they hold it's not a birchas hanehenin. They don't do that. We'll see over here, the Chachamim argued that if you want hana'ah, there is hana'ah. A blind person benefits even though he never saw light. And where do we find that? Ked Rabbi Yossi, the Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yossi, Kol Yomai, Hoyisi mitztair al mikrazeh. When we learn something in the Torah and we don't understand it, we should be in pain. Let's begin with that. He was in pain. It bothered him. What bothered him? When it says in the Torah, in Kisavoy, that that you will grope mamish in the middle of the day, like a blind person who's groping at night. Hold on. If you're trying to speak out that you'll be clueless and you're going to be groping during the day, write like a blind person. Why do you have to write in the pasuk like a blind person at night? For the blind person, the day and the night is the same. Great question. That is what bothered Rabbi Yossi. In other words, the Torah should have written, God forbid, that this concept end. The ba'afela is irrelevant. He's blind anyways. Until something happened. That's what we call hashgacha pratis. God, as Baal Shem Tov says, Hashem is talking to every one of us. Through everything we hear and see is Hashem trying to communicate something. We have to know how to listen. That what happened to Rabbi Yossi, I was going in the middle of the night, in the finsternish of the night. And I saw a blind person walking on the same road, and he was carrying a torch. And I told him, Bini, my son, he was blind. Why do you need the torch? So Amali, guys, the first white line. The blind person said, Gavaldik, not for me, for you to see me. For you, not for me. As long as I'm carrying a torch, people see that I'm here. And therefore, they save me from falling into a ditch, from getting injured by walking into thorns, by walking into barkanim, into briars, however you pronounce it. So there is a benefit of the luminaries for the blind person. When the sun is shining, others will help him. How beautiful is that? And Rabbi Yehuda,
the heat, he can feel the heat of the sun.
So a very good point. So obviously, Kevin, it must be that the ikir purpose of ma'oiros, look at the word ma'oiros, is not underlining the heat part and the medicinal part, which there is, but it's about ma'oir means light. Anyways, we're jogging through this. The main issue that we learn in yeshiva on this sugya is that why do we bichlal need for there to be hana? That's the bigger question. We are acknowledging God as the creator of the ma'oros. Especially al pi Chasidus, when we're learning the whole idea of these blessings is to arouse the godly soul. So we're speaking about the greatness of God. And all of that is going to inspire us to love Hashem. It's all leading up to the ve'ahavta. God is the Yoitzer HaMa'oros. That's amazing. Elamah, if you don't have Hana'ah from the Ma'oros, you don't appreciate enough God being the creator or the Yoitzer of the Ma'oros. So it's linked to Hana'ah. I'm saying this is a big topic. Let's go weiter. Next Mishnah. Now that
lane in shorts. That's also a good takeaway.
You have to also know how to define shorts. When it comes to the woman, for some reason, some people are nebach, ill, they are obsessed with the inches, what are shorts, what is it, what are shorts? How do you define shorts? And if, over the knee, including the knee, when you're walking with the knee, like go nuts on the shorts. I would say that there is a certain amount of tali b'minag hamakim. There's a certain norm. If you want to go by the letter of the law in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, it says that a man may not take off his socks outside the cover, only under your cover. You want to go to that? It's also shorts. Your pants are shorts. What did we learn in Yuma? That the begadim of the Kohen Gadol went until the floor, not dragging, no, but all the way to nothing was exposed. And there's different levels of shorts. For the men, I don't know, someone should write a sefer with the same geschmack they write by the women, with all the details. 12 inches, 11 inches, 4 inches, up and down. You can make a whole tight on this, about the shorts. Most people like us, we don't notice if the guy's wearing shorts. When you look at a Jew, don't look at his shorts. Look at the Yid. You're not going to notice it. But nevertheless, if you notice it, then you got a problem. Next Mishnah. Second line. Koyin sheyesh biyad of mumin. If a koyin has blemishes on his hands, lo yisas kapov, he should not duchen. Let's look inside the Rashi. Rashi says, Lefi, Sheha'am mistaklim, by people will stare at him, and we learn in Mesechtes Chagiga, ha-mistakel ba-koyhanim b'shah shenoisen eskapem, if someone gazes at the koyhanim when they're duchening, enough chaos, his eyes are damaged because of it. Few pointers. Number one, the word mistakel means to gaze. If someone over here, for an instant, accidentally happened to see the koyhanim's extended hands under their talesois, don't worry, this won't affect you. You're not allowed to gaze at it. Another thing, I'm not saying to look. I'm saying that the Kohanim today cover their hands. You can't even see their hands. And by the way, because of that, in Shulchan Aruch, in Poiskim, many opine that if a Kohen has a blemish on his hands, it doesn't matter. It's not shayach now that he covers his hands. This was only when the hands of the Kohanim were extended and it was uncovered. And if there was an anomaly on the hand, which people would look at, that might lead them to staring, and that's the issur of the Mishnah. So nowadays, if you are a kohen which has some sort of blemish on your hands, ask a paisik. Don't learn over here like anything else. Don't think you got a problem. You don't. There you go. That's how people duchen today, and no one can see their hands to begin with. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, it's not only if there's a blemish, any anomaly. Af mi shaya yadav tzevuos, if your hands are stained because you work in a dyeing plant, red dye, blue dye, satis, machloikas, what type of color that is. Also lo yisas kappa mepnei shoam mistaklim boim. Says the Gemara Torah we learned in a brayso, mumen sha'amru. The disqualifying blemishes that the Mishnah says, for which a kohen should not go up to the platform to give the blessing, is not only, even though the Mishnah spoke about hands, it's not only hands, befanav yadav v'raglav, and any part of the body that was then exposed when he gave the bracha. Face, hands, and feet. Even feet. Now kohanim wear socks. This is when they did not wear socks. If one's hands are spotted, all different types of skin ailments, with all the great medicine that we have out there, it's not so pashut to heal this on the skin. It's complicated. We're not good yet on that. So if you have these spotted whiter colors, different discolored hands, also lo yisas kapov. Tanya nami achi. Not only Rabbi Shua ben Levi, we found it later in a Tana, in a Braisa, Yodav boy hakiyonias lo yisas kapov. Another din, akumais, if they're bent forwards. Akushais, they're bent to the side, lo yisas kapov. Oh, now that we're speaking about that, now we're going to go me'ingen le'ingen. And we're going to go to people that cannot pronounce words clearly. Omar Avasi, Chaifani, if you're from Haifa, where's Iran Weiss? Beishani means you're from Beit Shan. These are names of places. Lo yisas kapov, don't duchen. Why? Because people there did not speak clearly, as we'll have examples in a moment. Tanya nami yachi. And now we're going back. It's not only duchening, it's bechlal davening. Lo ein moridin lifnei ateva. Loi anshe beishan, don't get someone that comes from that place. Loi anshe beis Haifa or Haifa. V'loi anshe tiv oinim. Why? Mipnei, because they are Ashkenazim. Why? What does that mean? That they for them an aleph and an ayin is all confused. Shekoydin la alf and ayin la ayin alf. Actually, I take back my statement, Ashkenazi. We don't differentiate. That's much less problematic. The problematic is that if you pronounce the aleph and the ayin the way you should, different one from the other, but you confuse one for the other, that's much worse. Like, for example, in Birchos Kahanim, you say Yo'er Hashem. Aleph is Yud Aleph Reish. May God enlighten you. If you by mistake, if you fadrei the aleph and the ayin, Yo'er with an ayin is a garchet poor for you. Doesn't work. So if a person confuses, doesn't make a difference. If they confuse what is aleph is read like an ayin and vice versa, and that's anshe beishan, anshe beis Haifa, anshe tivoinim, they should not be b'chlal leading the prayers. Oh, Rab Chia told the son of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rab Shimon, Ilmali Ata Levi, if you would be a Levi, Pasul Atam in Aduchan, you would not be allowed to go up. Leviim don't go up to give Brichas Kohanim, Leviim go up to sing. Because there also we want for the voices of the Leviim to blend one and the other. And if someone's voice is the Avi Kolach, someone's voice is very thick, unusually thick, it won't blend, it's going to stick out, he also shouldn't go. Anai Psul. So also Omar Leilavu, Rab Shimon told his father Rebbe, this is what Rab Chia told me, if I would be a Levi, my voice is so thick, I would not be allowed to sing with the other Leviim. So Amalei, so Rebbe told his son, Rab Shimon, go tell Rab Chia, that Kisha'ata Megia Eitzel V'chikisi Lashem, let him say Smechara from Megadev. You are telling me that my son cannot sing. Let me ask you a question. In the Haftarah, when you read a pasuk in Yeshaya that says V'chikisi Lashem, I awaited God's salvation. And here clearly Rab Chia, the opposite of a Russian. A Russian makes from a hay into a ches. He was the opposite. A ches, he made into a hay. Now, if you read this pasuk, instead of v'chikisi, I am awaiting for God's salvation. The way you read, you write v'hikisi, oy gevalt, hikisi means I hit God. I hit God, you're blaspheming. So basically what he told him is that if you are not qualified to sing, if you would be a Levi, then the one who told you that is not allowed to read the Haftarah. Now hold on, isn't it correct? If this is correct, Tosfos says that Rab Chia had a hard time pronouncing a ches. We have a story in Bava Metzia that when we were looking for someone to be a Bal Tefillah, and the whole sugya that if Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov would daven together, everything they would ask for would come true. And they wanted to know if there's anyone in their times that have that power. And they said, yeah, Rab Chia and his children are just as powerful as the Avos. That story, and they began to daven, Masha Varuach, and the wind began to blow. When they said the Masha, waited Ageshem, the rain began to fall, and they were going to say, Machaya HaMesim, the dead were going to get up. But how did he go for the Amid if Rab Chia has a problem with the Ches and the Hay? So Tosfos says that even though Rab Chia had a hard time, if he made a big effort, he would say the Ches. It took a lot of effort to say the Ches. When he was davening quick, so Rebbe, it's a very interesting back and forth. It's a little bit sharp. It's a lot more than Mita'ai. In other words, he told you you're disqualified, du bist euch disqualified. Leave it at that. Weiter. Amar Rafuna. Going back to the Birchas Kohanim, to the Kohanim. Zavligon is a Kohen whose eyes are tearing the whole time. A crier. Lo yisas kapov. Because everyone is going to look. Wow, he's saying Birchas Kohanim and the tears are coming out of his eyes. There was a Kohen in the neighborhood of Ravuna, and he would duchen even though his eyes were tearing up the whole time, or people would stare at him. So the Gemara says, he lived in that city, this Zavligon. Everyone was familiar with him. Very important. So it didn't attract attention. And this is a heter for everything. So if someone is in your group, and he has some sort of a physical deformity, but people are used to it, then there's no problem anymore. Another proof. However, if people are familiar with this person, then he's allowed to duchen. A blind person, even if only ba'achas me'enov lo yisas kapov, vadai if suma on both of his eyes. Here also to know, it's not a inherent disqualification. It's because people will stare at him. People that are blind, you can see that they're blind. Again, all of this is before we had Kavan's picture, before Kohanim would cover their faces and hands. Again, nowadays we paskin that anyways everything is covered. No one is able to be mistakel on them. Again, the kasha is a blind person, maybe ba'achas me'enov or b'shtei enov, and he ba'achas me'enov and he duchen to have a padis yadei. So here again, ahu dash be'irayhav. Everyone knew him. It was a norm. Tanya namiyachi suma ba'achas me'enov, even though it's only in one eye. Lo yisas kappa, but the im dash be'iray muter. Then finally, the Mishnah says that Rabbi Yehuda says that misha haya yadav tzuvuos lo yisas kapov. And now let's bring the same concept to here. What happens? Tana, we learned in a brayse im roiv anshi yoir malachtam bekach. You're living in a city filled with tinturarias, however you pronounce this in English. Everyone has dying plants. So everyone's hands are all colorful. Because it's not about an inherent issue. It's about not having something unusual that would attract people's gaze. And Rashi quoting from Chagiga Daf Tezayin, and that is a sakana pasha to some's vision if one gazes at the Kohanim. Let's chaparan a little bit weiter. Says the next Mishnah. These are good. I don't know how everything changed. Today's daf is showing you how the whole world became completely crazy. Today, maftir is the biggest kibbut. Then you would have to bribe someone to take maftir. Today in the Haredi world, you have to wear the white shirt. You have to wear a white shirt. It's almost as important as shorts. Not to go with shorts, but in those days, only idol worshippers were medagdek to wear white. They would never daven if they're wearing any colored clothing. The Fruma people didn't care if you wore colored clothing. When did you see a Fruma person wearing colored clothing? Maybe big Rebbes, taka beautiful, these golden bekishes. Changed. Today we're very black and white. So if a person would say that I'm not going to daven before the Amid if I'm wearing colored clothing, I'm only going to go with white clothing, we suspect this person is a heretic. He's from those Oivdei Avodah Zarah. Likewise, even if he's wearing white garments, he shouldn't daven for the Amid. Suspect was if this person is dressing the way people in your era, in your generation, Fruma people don't dress the way you're dressing, but who does? The Christians or people that are Oivdei Avodah Zarah. Then suspect them. Likewise, the Oivdei Avodah Zarah would not daven wearing a sandal. They would only daven barefoot. So if a person says "Besandal ein oiv," I'm not going to go with the sandal, even barefoot don't allow him to go, because he's saying that he would prefer to be dressed the way the goyim who serve idols at his generation dress. So even if he's dressing now the way all of the Fruma people dress, the fact that he expressed that desire, be suspicious. Next, ha'oiser tfilosei agula, tefillin. If you make your tefillin round, Now, as the Gemara will explain, there are two parts of round. The boxes have to be like cubes, but also the bottom of the tefillin, and we're focusing on the head, tefillin has to be flat. A rounded bottom of the tefillin means that what's resting on your head is not flat. Whoever wears rounded tefillin is in danger, as we'll see, because if there is it's nut shaped. Because if there's a smile, if there's a circle going in, going under your tefillin, if you'll bang into something, it can press into your head. And not only is it dangerous, there's no mitzvah, because it's essential for the tefillin not to be rounded. Another din. You know what? I know it's a middle, but we got to stop it. So every line is gold. We'll stop in middle of the Mishnah, and God willing to be continued.
Yeah.